Good morning, everyone. I'm Geetika, a final year undergraduate student here, majoring in economics.
Good morning, everyone. I am Shriyans. I'm a first year MBA student here at Flame University, and we will be your moderators for today's discussion.
We are truly honored to welcome you all to this highly anticipated interactive session with our Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar. Dr. Jaishankar has been a key figure in shaping the foreign policy of India and strengthening our global presence. We are truly privileged to have an opportunity to be interacting with him candidly and to gain his insights. We are truly honored to have you with us, sir, today.
Before we begin, I'd just like to set a few guidelines. I request that we have only one question each. We keep it brief. Follow-up questions would not be permitted due to paucity of time. Refrain from interrupting the flow of the session. Ensure that everyone's phones are on silent. And thank you so much for your cooperation and being with us here today. So we've heard that a lot of people have canceled their travel plans to be here for today's session.
I'm sorry about that.
So we look forward to an interesting, enlightening, and an insightful exchange. Thank you so much, sir.
Wow. So I can just feel the excitement in the room, and I can't wait to open the floor for the questions. But before I do that, I must ask you. The past 10 days have been so eventful for India. From BRICS in Russia to the USA, Canada, India dynamics to SEO in Pakistan, India has been everywhere, and you have been spearheading our efforts. And I must ask you, how do you do it all? How are you everywhere, wherever that you're needed?
Well, sometimes I wonder myself. But look, I think in a way, you should all see this as a reflection of the times. Don't think so much about how, as you ask me, how am I everywhere? Ask yourself, why does everywhere want us? You know, why is it that, say, in the BRICS, that, they are so keen that India is there? Why is it before that, a few weeks ago in the Quad, they were so keen India is there? Or that we had this SEO meeting for which I went to Pakistan. So there is today actually a kind of a value that people put on India. And that sense of that value, that's actually what drove me to write that last book. Because when I travel around the country, I listen to people in politics, in other walks of life. Look, there are people who are very optimistic and confident about what we will be. There are people who are less so, who see a sort of a problem in every solution rather than a solution to every problem. So it's important to actually appreciate where we are today. And honestly, that sense of you're going out there, you're representing your country, you are making your point. The adrenaline levels are very high when you do all that. So that just keeps you going.
So that really is food for thought today. But what inspired you to pursue a career in diplomacy? And as the youth of the nation, what do you think are the skills that we must cultivate so that we can align our personal growth with the greater good of the nation, so that wherever we go, we can leave a lasting impact?
So let me. How many of you here are studying international relations or taking some course? Okay, so I was like one of you. Okay, and if you ask me what got me into the foreign service and then thereafter into politics, I don't know. Maybe accident, maybe circumstances. I did my master's in international relations. At that time, my idea was really to teach. So I was actually doing that's why I have more degrees after the master's. And it was one of those, situations where I took the UPSC exam. It wasn't, I obviously have enjoyed my life and career after that, but I could have easily been in an academic stream of international relations, except, there was my father, who was in the government, actually urged me very cleverly. Parents are very clever. They know how to get you to do things without actually putting it out there so explicitly. So he made me think, do you want to study what other people do, or do you want to do something yourself? If you want to do something yourself, why don't you look at sort of applied international relations, which what the Foreign Service happened to be. I've always wondered, had we not had that conversation, how life would have been. But look, whether you study it or whether you are involved in it, I think the world is a fascinating place. And it's so much more understandable today. I just came from your wonderful library. Now, this would have been beyond my dream library when I was your age. I couldn't have imagined anything like that. But what today life has done, because actually the real library is what all of you have been asked to keep silent. Uh, so when you look at the flow of information today, your access to information, the impact of the world on our lives, on our choices, on our lifestyles, in a way, it's so much more. And I feel today, yes, those who are studying international relations, great choice, but those who are not also need to be very well informed about the world. You can't do business today without knowing the world. Frankly, you can't do pretty much anything today without actually understanding what the world is about, because whether we like it or not, the world has come to our homes. So even and it's both good and bad. People look, when COVID first came, you're reading about it. Something happened in some city in China. Who would have actually thought that 2 years of our lives would actually be totally dominated? So I would urge actually everybody saying, take an interest in the world. Follow what is happening here, and to do and shape it. Which is why you need to be out there. We can't be a spectator. We can't be an object or a playing field for others. We have to be a player too.
Thank you so much, sir, for that response. I believe there's a lot to take away for our students, especially for the ones studying international relations. Sir, I've always admired your journey from being a diplomat to now a minister. So how do you think diplomacy changes when you move from the back room to the front room of decision making? And is there a moment where you felt a weight of the shift during your career?
You mean in diplomacy or from diplomacy to politics?
From diplomacy to politics.
Well, see, that moment was a fractional moment because the Prime Minister called you and made you an offer which you could not refuse. So it there was you didn't have very much to think about that. But it's very different. Look, it's very different because when you are in diplomacy, it has its own culture, its own etiquette, its own rules. And you both know your profession, but you also know, okay, this is what I have to do, and there's a framework which, you could say in a way, the political leadership determines. Now, when you actually move from that to being part of politics and being part of the political leadership, now that additional responsibility is yours. So I've actually had, in a way, the good fortune. I was a secretary for 3 years. I had a great minister, Sushma Swaraj. We really worked very, very well as a combination. But I think inside me, I always had that feeling, okay, in the parliament, in the public space, she's there. She is going to explain it, she's going to defend it, she's going to rationalize whatever it is. I assume from her side, there was a reciprocal, okay, I have this guy who's done 40 odd years in this business. He's presumably reasonably good to reach that position, he can be trusted to execute what it is you're trying to do. Now, from that, now you actually get bumped up. I mean, to uh, to say, be in Parliament on the floor, take the responsibility, take those positions, make the case. It's very different. It's a really, in a sense, a jump up. And the other difference is, when you are political, you're actually far more, I'd say, interdisciplinary. You know, I would, when you are in a particular profession, it's very natural to know that profession, and your world is that profession. But if you are in politics, politics has no limitations. It's a profession. It's a domain without a boundary. So it could be health. It could, you worry, how will this impact economics? How will it have, let us say, deal with health or food or law and order, or so you get a much broader perspective, and even being in politics, dealing with, to me, honest, uh, I've had two post-career education experiences. Okay, one was to work a year with the Tata Group, which was a paid MBA of the highest quality you could get. They actually paid you, and you actually learnt a huge amount. The other is actually being in politics and being in the cabinet. What you get from the Council of Ministers, from the cabinet, from actually, even an election campaign is a huge educational experience. I mean, every day you pick up something you didn't know that morning.
Sir, in your very varied and vibrant spectrum of career, you've had and you've served as so many roles, and the way you approach them is so varied. So, in your experience, what do you think is the most undervalued or the most misunderstood challenge that Indian foreign policy faces? And what are we doing to address them?
I feel, look, we have both an advantage and the all that goes with it in terms of being an old civilization. In many ways, we are very assured. When you deal with other nations, often they don't have that history, that culture, that sense of themselves, those traditions, which we do. It's a huge plus. Uh, But at the same time, what it does is it makes us sometimes very self-satisfied, self-absorbed. I mean, we are there. I mean, we've been there forever. Okay, things happen around the world. So what? But it's important, I think, today. You look, the world is not just more connected. World is also more competitive. When the world is more competitive, you got to be out there making your case, fighting for your rights, pushing your interests. And that, the very thing which works for you in many ways, you have to sometimes get over that feeling, well, everybody will understand us anyway. They could, but you have to work at it. So it's, I think, important to have that very strong competitive sense. And what I say this, and I'm actually not saying it just to please all of you, though I'm sure you will be. Actually, India today, when I look at young people in India today, I think they are far, far more competitive than, every 10 years, every decade. If I say, okay, 2025, where are you? 2015, 25, 1995. You can actually see the society change. You can see people are better informed. There is a sharper sense, not just about their own line of work or their own subject of study, but generally aware. But more than that, they are much. There's there's a spirit in the country today. I think there's a spirit in the country today which is much stronger. It was always there. It had to come out more and more. It had to be encouraged. It had to be nurtured. And I think today that sense that, look, there are things we can do. And, when just think back in the last few years, there are so many things we take pride in. We take great pride. Okay, Chandrayaan, we went to the moon. Okay. COVID, we produced our own vaccine, we handled it. Ukraine, we brought our people back. Totally different things. But everywhere there is that spirit saying, okay, there's a problem. I don't think, that problem is not going to defeat. That it's something we can do. And I think sharpening that and encouraging that. And it's both there and it's even fitness, I would say. Again, one of the things I really liked about the university in the tour I did is the fact that, because the physical fitness also adds to the sharpness of the mind. I mean, if you feel good about yourself, your thinking is that much more positive and creating. So I would say, I mean, it's a long answer, but I do think we should resist that temptation to say, we have arrived or, we are complacent. I mean, competition is endless and we have to keep that kind of way going.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that wonderful response. So I do believe that strengthening that spirit that you spoke about is very important, and that's one thing that we should all work towards. So speaking of challenges, since Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi took office in 2014, India's relations with the West Asian countries and the OIC countries have seen a remarkable transformation. So what has changed from a policy perspective under PM Modi's leadership that has allowed India to build such strong ties with partners who were not so friendly with us earlier?
Well, look, in their defense, it wasn't that they were not so friendly necessarily. I give you the prime example. Okay, UAE, United Arab Emirates. Okay, now the fact is they were there, just across the waters, but there was actually very little effort made to engage them. Now, many of you are studying business. Okay, now if you don't engage other people in that business, how is the business going to get done? Now, it'll amaze some of you that when Prime Minister Modi went to UAE in 2015, he was the first Prime Minister after Indira Gandhi to go to UAE. Now, this is a country where 3 million Indians live, which is a big oil supplier, which is a very influential political player. But if you don't make that effort, why would they reciprocate? And this more or less has been the pattern, especially in the Gulf, I would say. I mean, I can think of other places as well. So you actually, the first part of the answer is there was a reach out from our side, which they believed was lacking earlier. That's one. Secondly, I told you life is competitive. Look, everybody in the world, every country watches every other country. If you're doing well, I mean, it's like students in a classroom. If a set of students or you're doing well, everybody else in the classroom knows that, and their view of you is obviously shaped by that. So I think they've also seen in the last decade, okay, this guy is serious. He's really, determined to modernize India, to take it to a different level. And he doesn't let the smaller obstacles get in the way. There's a sort of direction he's going. So I think a lot of it is their assessment of what is happening in India. So if their view is that, well, this is all talk, then they wouldn't be responding. If they believe, no, actually, he's walking the talk. Things are happening. The infrastructure is changing. The new capability is coming. The economy is picking up. Whatever. I mean, you take the parameters of the judgment. So I would say reach out, number one, an assessment of the changes in India too. The third, I would say, in a way, we are also contributing more. The image in the Gulf a few decades ago would be very much more of like blue collar labor, would be and trade, people in small trade. Okay. Today, I mean, my most recent visit was to Saudi Arabia. You meet people who are running multi-billion-dollar businesses there. People who are in the core industries, someone who's into the new city they are building, someone who's doing big things in the oil refining sector. So the sense today, the changes of India, the capabilities of India, all that is also getting reflected in India. So, I mean, across about 20 years ago, this idea, when Y2K happened, this idea that Indians are techies, this became an image. Okay. Now, today, if you go to the Gulf, it's actually the Indian professional, the Indian engineer, the Indian doctor. Most of the big public projects, you will find somebody either individually or as a company from India. You would have all seen Burj Khalifa, okay, or at least seen pictures of Burj Khalifa. Now, when you actually see, okay, you will see Indian companies have had a contribution of that. So that's also changed the way people look at us. And then there is finally, that sense of confidence today that in difficult times, when you come under pressure, the feeling is, yes, today India will stand up and speak its mind. That it won't go with the flow, it won't be timid, it won't be silent, it will stand up for its interests. I think it's a mix really of all of this.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your response. Shall we open the floor for questions? Let's take the first question, please.
Good morning, sir. Firstly, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. It's an honor to be interacting with you today. So my question is, how would you trace the importance of informal interactions during high-level meetings in shaping diplomatic decisions? Have you had any instance or instances that you can perhaps share with us where an unexpected conversation or an informal conversation has shaped a decision?
Can I take three at a go?
Yes, sir, sure.
Three questions.
Yes, we can do that. Can we have the next question, please? Another one? Somewhere from here?
Hello, sir. It's beyond an honor for all of us to be interacting with you. My question for you is, what are some of the critical skills or mindset shifts that you would want aspiring diplomats to imbibe, but which traditional diplomatic training tends to overlook, particularly in India's context of shifting from non-alignment to multi-alignment?
Let's take one more. Can we get someone from here?
Your direction is all that way. So after this,
Somewhere we'll take one
you'll
from
get
the
a
right as
chance
well.
when she's called.
Yes, we'll move to the right as well.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. This is a very surreal moment for me to be asking you a question. So I wish to ask you a question about the Maldivian situation and Indo-Maldivian relations. So despite the successful political maneuvering and the diplomatic success that we faced with Maldives recently, it's pretty evident that Maldivian relations have evolved after the introduction of the BRI. So how does India perceive this? especially with regards to the security of the trade routes in the Indian Ocean region?
Thank you. Good question. So let me do one thing. Let me take the first two questions together because I think there's a degree of overlap out there. So the first question, how much do informal interactions count? I think an enormous amount, an enormous amount because at the end of the day, both diplomacy and politics, and I would even say to some degree business, these are people's activities. You're actually engaging somebody else with an argument or with an interest or with an objective, and the better you read them and the more comfortable you are with them and they are with you, the chances of your success are that much higher. So what we do is, now you don't, again, like in business, you don't go to someone when you actually have that business. You can, but if you're smart, you'd already know them. You'd make that effort and say, okay, one day I could be doing business, or one day, how do I prepare my ground so that your first pitch is not a transactional pitch. It's a comfortable pitch. So what you do really in diplomacy is you all the time you collect friendships, you collect relationships. So when, for us, the most exhausting week is 1 week in September when everybody converges in New York for the UN General Assembly. We just did one this September. You do 15, 20 meetings in a day. You get up in the morning and you're on the go till late at night because you are trying to max the fact that everybody is the same place, you're getting value for time. But the most important thing is, if you and I are sitting together, we're chatting, and when you do it, when you have these relationships, you also by now have some sense, this person's interested in sports. So, okay, so what movie did you watch? What did you read? How's the family? So you do a lot of that because it's the relationship building which ultimately is applied to a particular situation or a particular problem. So, even in education, this interpersonal skills, this ability to work with, your fellow students, to play sports, to do projects together, to even live together. All these are parts of how do you do that. And when you do that, and by the way, the modern technology makes it so much easier. I very often, now that, most foreign ministers are on WhatsApp or Signal or whatever channel they prefer. So, if I do it, and I also get message. There are people, if you've done well in a sport, or, I know there's a group of us, for example, who discuss cricket. Okay. So, good or bad, you'd get a message. That last match with New Zealand wasn't so great. Okay. So I got a few messages out there. So people make, this is today, it's so much more easier to be connected. And when you do that, it can be birthdays, it can be anniversaries, it just can be fun moments, something you are doing, you send somebody saying, you're looking awful, you need to take a break. They appreciate it. And then it's so much easier to actually talk about the things you need to talk. And so a lot of the reason why you actually see foreign ministers or even prime ministers, move around. And there's a second aspect to it. See, once you also, all of us develop a reputation. You develop a reputation as a country, you develop a reputation as an individual. And you develop a reputation only if you know each other. So there are many situations where, they know if say Prime Minister Modi says that is so, he means it. He will deliver on it. His word is his bond. So that kind of personal interaction, and that's the reason why, in fact, I would say 80% of diplomacy is actually informal. You are delivering the last script for a formality or a messaging reason out there in public. The real work is mostly done backstage. And so that then comes to the critical skills. A lot of it is what I said, it's an interpersonal skill. But there is one skill which is very important to cultivate, which is the ability to put yourself in the shoes of the other person. If you can figure out anybody you are dealing with, you're talking to, try to think like them. Try to figure out why are they saying what they are saying, what could be their objective. It's also a great skill. And that, to some extent, within our own society is one level of skill. But if you're dealing with the world, you have to have that cultural ability, because different cultures do think different. Somebody in China or Japan or Russia or America doesn't, their algorithms up there are very different from ours. Okay. So how do you actually rapidly transpose your thought process onto theirs? So, it's a look again. I see a lot of lessons out of sports. If you think something which looks as simple as cricket, which is not so simple really. There you have a batsman trying to anticipate the bowler, watching the hand, who's trying to mask the hand, and then the batsman is adjusting, to which the bowler is adjusting. At how many levels in that microsecond is that being played out? So I would say, the reason why it's important to develop, the ability to communicate, because communication is both a absorption and a radiation at the same time. You have to know what to say. You say it the right way to the right person with the right nuance. So it's a mix, but I would say in terms of critical skills, definitely interpersonal skills, but intercultural skills. I think intercultural skills are very important. At my age, I would say intergenerational skills also, but that's a different matter. Your Maldivian question. Look, we have a set of neighbors, okay, with whom there's a history, there's obviously geography, there's a lot of shared culture, sociology, etc. Now, the neighbors also will naturally try to see what is it they can get most out of India. Just like we would try and see what we can get most out of our neighbors. Okay. This doesn't mean relations are necessarily good or bad. This is what international relations, world politics is about. Now, what has happened in recent years is that for many neighbors, they have also tried to use the relationship with China to their advantage. So whether we like it or not, China is today the second largest economy in the world, but that's okay. We will also be, if you look at our trends, we are going to be up there too. I have no doubt in my mind. We today are competing with China, and we can compete with China. And again, don't get me wrong, not just with China. I think in the world we have to compete with all the other major players as well. Somewhere our interests would converge, somewhere it would not. But that confidence to compete today, that really will shape our relationship with the neighbors. So in the case of Maldives, yes, Maldives from its perspective will try to optimize all its relationships. But I am very confident that when they look at what India puts on the table, you look at the kind of the importance of that relationship today. They import so much of their essential needs from India on a very special dispensation that we give only to Maldives. There's no other country. there are many things which we don't export, but we give a carve out only for the Maldives. There are, if you go to Maldives, I was there some months ago, you look today at the impact in Maldives. Many of the things we are doing in India, like say you would have all heard of Jal Jeevan Mission, getting water, piped water, or electricity. Now, many islands, I was there for an inauguration of, I think, 26 islands, which had got their water and sewerage connection, thanks to an Indian project. Now, to the average Maldivian, India is the country which has delivered on that. Some of the big infrastructure projects which are today on the skyline in Maldives or in Malay are Indian. One of the major hospitals out there is Indian. So, in fact, if you go around in Maldives, many of the teachers, I must tell you, even school teachers are Indian. So people associate you with education, with health, with infrastructure, with water, with sewage. I mean, it's going to be very hard to really beat that branding. So yes, there could be competitive offers, but I don't think we should be, sort of timid or hesitant or underconfident. I think today this country has the ability to compete. We have shown that. And you spoke about Maldives. You should look at Sri Lanka. That in Sri Lanka today, every Sri Lankan knows. Even people who historically were critical of India, today they will come and tell you that, look, we know one thing, that when the entire world threw up its hands and they were literally running out of food, they were running out of electricity because it was fired up by oil. They were in such dire straits. Everybody knows that who came forward.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that response. I'll let Gidika take the next 3 questions, so maybe someone from this section can get a chance.
Okay, maybe we can look at someone in the section. Yeah. Since there's so many hands, maybe another one. Yeah.
Good morning, sir. My name is Bhavna Seduraman. I'm a final year undergraduate student with a major in international relations. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So on 21st October, India and China came to an agreement to disengage troops along the LAC. 4 years after the deadly clash between the two, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the BRICS summit on Wednesday, 23rd. So my question is, how and why did we come to this agreement now? And what can we expect from the future of India and China relations? Thank you.
Okay, we can have one more question from the center here.
Hello, sir. My name is Devansh, and it's an absolute honor to meet you. So, my question is how can the youth of India contribute to promote the values of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, drawing lessons from Mahabharata in this polarized world? And what role can students play in fostering global harmony through education, dialogue, and cross cultural experiences?
Okay, and we can have one more from the here.
Hello, sir. I'm Pat, and it's an honor to interact with you. So my question is, as we know in the recent light that Bangladeshi thing about the politics. So what is India doing to, engage with the new political establishment in Bangladesh, particularly if the new government, if they maintain a distance from us? Thank you.
So let's start with the China question. If I can just kind of roll that back a bit, that from 2020, the situation in the border has been very disturbed. And that's had a negative, understandably, a very negative impact on the overall relationship. Now, since September 2020, we have actually been negotiating with the Chinese on how to find a solution. Now, there are different aspects of the solution. There is immediately the most pressing one is what you call disengagement, because the troops are very, very close up to each other, and the possibility of something happening, God forbid, is there. So that's the sort of the first set of issues. Then there is what is called de-escalation, which is because there's been a troop buildup on both sides. You know, they built it up, we responded. And then there is the larger issue of how do you manage the border and how do you negotiate the boundary settlement. Right now, everything that is going on is with respect to the first part, which is the disengagement part. At some places before, after 2020, we came to understandings of how the troops return to their bases. But there was one significant segment which was relating to patrolling, you know, where there was blocking of patrolling. And that is what we have been trying to negotiate now for the last 2 years. So what happened on October 21st was that in those particular areas, Depsang and Demchok, we came to the understanding that there would be patrolling would be resumed on how it used to be before. You know, I mean, the people are still writing about it, but I think people need to be patient. You will see it play out in the coming days. Now, this was important because it was then an you know, affirmation that, okay, if we can actually do the disengagement, then it's possible for the leadership level to meet, which is what happened in Kazan during the BRICS. Where do we go? I think it's still a little bit early. We have to wait for things to obviously settle themselves. Because after 4 years of a very disturbed border, where peace and tranquility has really been shattered, it will take naturally time to sort of rebuild, you know, a degree of trust and sort of a willingness to work with each other. That's I think natural. So it's important. Look, if today we have reached where we have, there are two reasons for it. One, a very determined effort on our part to stand our ground and make our point. And, you know, this would only happen because the military, you know, was there in very, very, I mean, unimaginable conditions to defend the country. And you know, the military did its part and diplomacy did its part. And the second is because actually in the last decade, we have also improved our infrastructure. Because part of our problem is that we in the earlier years, we have really neglected the border infrastructure. So when you put in more resources, because today we put in, I would say, almost 5 times annually the resources, maybe more than there used to be a decade ago. And that's showing results, and that enables the military actually to be effectively deployed. I think the combination of all of this has led to where it is. I would say, in all honesty, I would be patient. I would wait to see how this goes on. But when Prime Minister and President Xi met, at that time it was decided, okay, the foreign ministers will meet and the national security advisors will meet and see how this is to be taken forward. On the second question, you know, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, look, and you specifically asked with regard to Mahabharata. I mean, my whole idea that the world, you need to be world aware, that you need, the world is coming So it's better you understand it fully. And we shouldn't do it out of compulsion. We actually have things to contribute. We can make literally the world a better place, culturally, lifestyle-wise, security-wise, economically. So we have things to contribute. And I say today that, when I travel around the world, many countries have turned their back on the world. That if you go to, especially to a lot of Western countries, you have political debates there, which are very hostile in a way to the world. They see the world as somehow threatening. I would say the world, if you understand it well, is opportunity. And if you are culturally, there's one great thing which we Indians have. I've seen people in so many countries, they go there, they localize so fast, they learn the languages, they make friends. We have this cultural ability to work with other people and other cultures. I think we should use it in a way to national benefit. So we certainly should embrace a policy of doing more with the world. And there's a sound economic logic to it. There is today a huge demand in the global workplace. Yesterday, before taking the plane, Chancellor Schulz of Germany was there in Delhi. He was in talks with Prime Minister Modi. And, he was singing the praises, really. The Germans were talking about Indians in a way in which really all of you would have been very proud. And one of the things which the Germans said is, look, every year we give about 20,000 work visas. We've decided to scale it up to 90,000. So, because there is today a global workplace. There are people want talent, people want those skills. This could be in very tech-related areas. It could be equally, they need more doctors, they need more nurses, they need more health workers, they need more chartered accountants. So when you say there is a demographic dividend, the demographic dividend actually is best realized when you actually deploy it at a global level. And that is something which I think is, for me, if our universities get people's minds looking at the world, and I think here, learning, getting some exposure to a foreign language, for example, is very useful. I mean, if there was something I would have regretted in my education, it is that I didn't learn a foreign language till I started actually working, other than English. So I would say there is a lot. But the Mahabharat part also I agree, because Mahabharat is both an exercise of ethics, but also of realism. That, not everybody in the world is well disposed. There are some people who deserve good treatment, and there are some people who don't. And you have to know which one is which, and you have to know how to respond. And there are a lot of learnings, out of that. When do you respond? When are you patient? When do you, when do you accept? When do you sort of push back? So I think that statecraft and the strategic lessons which come out of Mahabharata are really something which are very invaluable. And your students' role, look, we need to start early. It's honestly much hard to pick up things with the progression of time. So to the extent young people, when students go out, if students have that confidence to look at the global workplace, and the global workplace, by the way, doesn't physically need to be out of India. I just saw a report, there are global capability centers. These are centers set up by multinational global businesses. There are almost 2,000 of them today in India. I think 1,800 or 1,900 was the number I saw. And their exports are today about $150 billion. So the world as a workplace is also coming physically into India. That's also a phenomenon of our times. So I do think students are the cutting edge today of how India will deal with the world, and that positive mindset which you spoke about is very good. a Bangladesh question, just to round up. Look, everything that I said about Maldives or I said about Sri Lanka, it applies to a great extent in Bangladesh as well. When you look at our neighbors, ask yourself, when COVID happened, where did the vaccines come from? When Ukraine war happened, where did the petroleum and the fertilizers come from? When their kids get stuck abroad, in whose flights do they come back? When you look at medical tourists, when you look actually at the volume of trade, when you look at the logistics, that today many of our neighbors, they take power from India, they sell power to India, they buy fuel from us. So then, the more the neighborhood is kind of bound together. I think the logic of economics is today creating that. So yes, we will get that political, noise. It happens. After all, there's been a very significant change of regime out there. But I also think we should not, sort of be so carried away that we forget that there are some very basic fundamentals which actually bind us together. And I think, when people get down to governance, let me tell you, governance is a very, very sobering experience for everybody. There is a reality check which comes from governance, and I have every confidence that, look, our relationship the fundamental soundness of that relationship will assert itself.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that response. So very wonderful answers on China, on Mahabharata, and on Bangladesh as well. I'd also like to tell you that at Flame, our educational philosophy encourages our students, in fact, to be global citizens with a global outlook, while at the same time being rooted in the Indian tradition. And congratulations on the positive developments we've had with China. In fact, when I was studying international relations, there was a Chinese proverb that I heard that two tigers can't share the same hill. So I hope that someday we could. So I'd like to take 3 more questions. So I'm going to take one from each side. So let's take the next one from the right side here. Can we give it to her? The one there? Yes. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. So my question pertains to India and Canada. So recently, both India and Canada removed their diplomats from their respective countries. So in your opinion, how can this affect the current as well as aspiring students of India who want to pursue a higher education in Canada?
Let's take the next one from the left here.
Hello, sir. So for people like us who are passionate about foreign service or want to become like you in the future, what is one advice would you give us to stay motivated, especially when the process may seem more challenging?
Okay, and let's take one last one from the center for balance. Come. Someone from here?
Hello, sir. Namaste. So it's a privilege to be speaking with you here today. So my question was on the future of the multilateral system. I mean, there are n number of international violent conflicts happening right now, and while India is doing a lot to respond to them, the current multilateral system, to be frank, seems paralyzed to respond. A lot of countries like India has advocated for reforms, particularly in the UN Security Council, but there just seems to be more challenges than we thought so. So what are those challenges, and what would ideally a reform multilateral system look like? Thank you.
The Canada question might be a place to start. Look, frankly, for us, we see we are really completely sort of reject the manner in which the Canadian government targeted our High Commissioner and diplomats. Let's just look at what is the issue. What is the issue in a way is that there are a small minority of people there, but who have made themselves into what appears to be a bigger political voice. Okay. And unfortunately, the politics of that country is giving that political lobby, you can call it, perhaps a degree of play, which I would argue is not just bad for us and for our relationship. I would argue is also bad for Canada itself. Now, it isn't just having a view. Many other things have happened in the course of the last few years, and as a result, whether it's a kind of people who have gone there, the kind of activities which have been permitted out there, all these have actually had a negative impact on themselves. And now, today they are saying, things about us. But if you actually look, who first raised the presence of organized crime in Canada? We were telling them. We were telling them, and they were not listening. So today, they make out as though, there's this thing happening out there, but it's happening because of a permissive atmosphere over a long time. But I do think that this is an issue with a particular political phase or a set of political forces. We would certainly not, hope that more sensible, more sober, more responsible thinking asserts itself. Both countries have a big economic relationship. You mentioned students. There are people of Indian origin who live out there. In fact, unfortunately, because of the security threats to our embassy, to our High Commission, even their travel got impacted, which we have, now sort of stabilized. So we certainly on our side, we have actually in many ways been the people who have reasoned with the Canadian system, saying, look, don't go down this extremist path. And I would hope that, at some stage that realization is sharper and we find some sensible solution. But obviously, if our own national interest and, the integrity and the sovereignty of our country is involved, I mean, it is very natural that we will take the position that we have done. On, your question, how do you stay motivated? Look, I mean, it's important to have goals in life. Okay, it's important to have ambitions in life. Everybody must have something which drives them, which makes them work harder, which says, okay, and which you are testing yourself. Now, sometimes you realize it, sometimes you don't, sometimes you realize it fully, sometimes you don't, sometimes you realize it more than you ever expected it to be. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I'd ever be a minister, but it happened. So I think this is a phase of life where you are actually in a way testing yourself, motivating yourself. It's important to have, friends and people with whom you can discuss similar things, because often it's I say this as a father of 3 children. Often you invite a lot of pressures on yourself during this period. So you need to have people to share it with and peer group to discuss it with. It certainly helps. I mean, if 4 people have the same set of issues they are looking at, let me tell you, it's obviously much lighter. Group, there's a certain group, not just group think, there's a certain group confidence and a group sharing which comes out of it. But I really wish you all the best as a aspirant. I mean, I hope one day to welcome you into the foreign service. So all the best. On the multilateral system, you know, here's an issue, and the current world order, you can say, it was it was engineered, or the architecture is 1945. Okay, at that time, if you look at even the number of countries who signed the UN Charter, there were 51, of which some like us were not free. Okay, now the number of members are 193. So, I mean, I tell people, in any other domain, you know, say in a business domain, if a business had grown from 51 to 193, would you still say that the management board should remain the same management board of those 51 shareholders and not have the other 142 shareholders reflected in some? I mean, does that make any sense to you? But it is a reality, because those who sort of enter the door, you know, there's the phenomenon, they close the door behind them. So the ones who are there, in many ways, are the ones who are most resistant to the change, because they want to safeguard the privileges. But what is happening is, you can say, an expanded enterprise with a narrow management is obviously then not able to deal with many other issues. So look at the big issues of our times. You know, what is happening in Ukraine, what is happening in the Middle East, in West Asia, management of COVID, for example. Now, in all of these, what happens is, if the bulk of the countries feel that those in the room really don't speak for us, that they have their own interests, they have their own history, then you do your own thing, you know. And those five also today are in a situation where they're continually blocking each other. So even in a limited way, there is a certain gridlock out there. So it is something we will keep pushing. We do feel that in a sense, the forces of history are with us. There is a, you know, every time I go to the UN, I can see more and more people expressing their frustration. So at some point, you know, it will happen. Now, it's a question of staying power and mobilizing power. And that's really what we are trying to do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I'll let Gitika take the
Sir,
next
actually, it is really fascinating to see how India is approaching these global situations, because even here at Flame University, we are encouraged to approach these complex situations not in silos, but to actually understand how they actually interact and demonstrate themselves in reality. So I think it's very reassuring and rather encouraging for us to keep at it, because we can see the same principles are being applied even in leadership. So I think that's a really good takeaway for our students. Let's move on to the next question. Maybe we can have someone from the left here.
Good afternoon, sir. It's an honor to be interacting with you today. My question is, do all countries currently see India as the voice of the global South? And if so, then how can we see India advocating for these countries further?
Okay, we can have a question from the right.
Greetings, sir. It is an absolute honor to stand before you and ask this question. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My question is in line of the vision of many friends, few foes, greater goodwill and more influence, as described in your book, The India View, which also happens to be one of my favorite books. How can India really leverage its cultural diplomacy to enhance our foreign policy, to strengthen our international ties, and maybe explore and expand our global influence? How do you think we can utilize our cultural diplomacy? Thank you.
And we can have one from the center.
Hello, sir. I'm grateful for this opportunity. My question is in a slightly different light from the others. So, we live in a globally connected world, and for those of us who maybe do not have a background in, let's say, international relations, we also play a role in shaping the image of the country through social media platforms, content creation platforms, and all of these technologically enabled sources. So how can we act as responsible citizens, and what's the most crucial thing that we should be keeping in mind when we're involved in these sorts of platforms?
The first question on the voice of the global south. I think what do we actually mean by the global south? We largely mean countries who were colonized, who got their independence, or who are still developing, who would be largely a low-income country. Okay, and because we sometimes get into this debate, people ask us, not always in a well-meaning way, okay, define global south. So there's those who are from the global south know they are from the global south because of all these experiences and criteria. Now, do we speak for most of them or all of them? I won't say, I'd be fair. I would say they have a high degree of trust and expectation in India, and with a reason. I can give you 3 examples. In much of the global south, the developing world, people do remember that during COVID, when the developed world was actually stockpiling vaccines, many of them got their first vaccines from India. And they got the vaccines from India when India was still vaccinating its own people. I cannot overstate to you the emotional impact of this on the world. In my travels, even now people bring it up, but particularly I would say the first year after COVID, I've had people with whom there's even a linguistic barrier. They spoke a language which I didn't, but they tried to come up to me and sort of tried to signal in some way that, sort of thank you for what you did. There are people who've been much more expressive about it. In fact, if you see, there are many world leaders, you will see them on YouTube, who really, and many of them actually become emotional talking about it. And that sense at that time, that look, the developed world turned its back on us, and were it not for you. Because for a lot of these were very small countries. These were countries where 100,000 doses made the difference between life and death and survival of that particular society. So that was one example. A second example was actually Ukraine, where the widespread sentiment in the global south was, okay, you stood up and said what was to be said. We would have loved to say it. Unfortunately, opposition didn't allow us. But believe me, actually, we share those sentiments. A third example would be during our G20. For many, many years in G20, the African Union wanted a seat. So every G20, and I've attended almost without break the last 11 of them, every G20 would begin like this. The first day of the G20, everybody tell the African Union, don't worry, during this meeting, we'll take care of you. At the end of the meeting, when nothing happened, they'll say, sorry, this time we couldn't do, next time we will look at it. So they kept kicking it down the road. Now, the fact that we actually took up this cause and in many ways pushed it in a way in which everybody had to accept. So for a lot of the, especially the African countries, uh, they do they do think that India has a sort of India has a conscience, India has a standing, India has a confidence today to put that across, take this up in a very public way, and uh, you know at the end of the day, for them it's like you are such a large country with all those attributes, that is what in their minds the voice of the global south is all about. It leads actually to the cultural diplomacy question, because it isn't just our size, our population, or our economic strength. Those are very critical attributes, but somewhere there is also that civilizational sense of India, a feeling that look, Indians, the India takes a long view. India is not like a plays a purely tactical game. That when Indians take positions, it's thought through. I mean, it could be. I mean, today it could be when we are trying to urge a kind of a dialogue or diplomacy when it comes to the Ukraine war, or it could be when we advocate something like millets or yoga. And I think the cultural part of it is very much part, a very intrinsic facet of that civilizational image of India. Look around the world, there are, in modern days terms, there are not many nations which can say I'm actually an old civilization which is a modern state. There are very, very few. And therefore it's important for us, I mean, quite apart from the fact that many of our cultural practices, frankly, have benefited the world. When I look in the last 10 years, how much yoga has actually spread in the world, it's amazing. I remember the pre-2015 period, where it would be a relatively marginal activity in a few countries. So it has actually become globally mainstreamed in a way, and people slowly understand that this is not just something purely physical. So that aspect of it is also getting through. And the last question, look, again, it's not my intention to say people who study international relations alone should look at the world. I mean, I actually have a pitch that I think everybody should look at the world. Today, a business person, a technology person, a famous, person, accomplished person in arts, let us say, all of them together actually build our, international image. I mean, as I said, one of the best things which happened, I mean, when you look at India, US, for example, one of the reasons why the relationship took off was because this image of this, the Indian techie, these are hardworking people, you can trust them, they are family centric, they're responsible, contributing citizens. This is the kind of image today that we have. So even in countries where there are very, very fierce immigration debates going on, people actually like Indians. So I would argue that today, yes, people who obviously make IR a specialty have a particular attachment or expertise. But I would argue that in every profession, whatever you do, it's important to know the world. That if you look at the good periods of Indian history, our best periods were those when we actually forayed out and we understood the world. Some of our worst mistakes in history was when we didn't understand what was happening in the world, and we kind of allowed, vulnerabilities and situations to arise.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that response. Yes,
last
sir.
round.
We'll take one last round. Okay, one last question, please. One last round. Okay. Okay, sure. Let's take 2 more. Okay. Can we have a question from here? Someone there in the corner there? Yeah.
Namaste, sir. It's an honor to be talking to you. My question is that we read a lot of books, and I read a lot of books, and I have read your book. My question is, what books do you read, and what are your recommendations for us?
Okay, let's take one from the left here.
Hello, sir. Thank you for interacting with us today. So my question for you is, as India and US plan to expand their collaborations in terms of technology, health, or defense, what are some key areas where you see potential for growth, and what are some challenges that you think we need to navigate upon?
Okay, and let's take one from the center here. That's the last question.
Hello, sir. It's really an honor to be speaking to you. It feels like a dream. So I have a very light question as compared to the others. What is one question that everyone asks you wherever you go?
You know, that's a really hard question. So, look, I'm really very pleased to hear you say that about the books, because you know, it's a great habit, and even one of the nice things I must tell you about being a foreign minister or being a diplomat is, when you do these long plane rides, you spend a fair amount of time in airports, and you have those jet lag hours where you get up at 2 o'clock and can't sleep till 6. Books are a great help. You know, I mean, people today get information in different ways. I mean, I think it's partly, as I said, it's intergenerational. Someone like me still primarily uses, I mean, I do a lot of surfing of stuff, but still for deep understanding, I would say, of a particular issue, it would still be very much books. A lot of what I read is like history, or current affairs. By the way, again, one of the things you've got to do as a minister is also to release people's books. Okay, that comes now. Now I have a caution. I normally don't release a book if I've not read it, because you don't know, you know, what you may end up. So now here's the good part of it. So the more people press you to release books, more books you actually end up reading. So at the moment I'm in the midst of and sometimes I carry more than one book at a time. So I'm actually working on a set of books which I have to be releasing soon. So I won't actually give you the name, but one is like you know, it's on economic choices which we have made in the past. The others is a pure history book related. Both will make news in their own way, I think. The India-US, you know, I do think that this relationship is now coming into its own, and it's got many strong things going for it. Somewhere there is today a certain fit which has happened. It's happened for a variety of reasons. You know, could be strategy, could be I would still say it happened most of all because of people. And I'll give you a very interesting number, which I read, by the way, in a book. The number was that when Pandit Nehru first went to America, there were 30,000 Indian Americans. When Indira Gandhi first went as Prime Minister to America, when Pandit Nehru went, it was 3,000. When Indira Gandhi went, it was 30,000. When Rajiv Gandhi went, it was 300,000. When Narendra Modi went, it was 3.5 million. And now it's actually, if you add citizens and non-citizens, it's about, I think roughly people use 5 million as a ballpark figure. Now, it isn't just the numbers, it's also the connect. What kind of people, what are the connects? And here's the interesting thing about Indians, and something we should feel proud of. Look, Indians may go anywhere in the world. They can be extraordinarily successful or not. But whether they are successful or not, they never forget where they came from. So you have many of these hyphenated communities in America, Dash Americans. Many of them actually, not all of them necessarily have a good relationship or a strong relationship back with their country of origin. I think Indians have that unusually strongly. And so to my mind, this people's connect which has happened, it has a great ability to shape this relationship. But if you look at other things, I think politically, strategically, even technology, we are moving into an age of AI, of electric mobility, of drones, of chips, of space, which all needs a certain set of talents and skills. And I would argue that globally, there is a deficit of that. And if there is something which India can bring to the table, I heard Prime Minister actually say something very interesting yesterday. He was telling Chancellor Scholz, he said, the last century, countries grew by their control over natural resources. In this century, countries will grow by the quality of their human resources. And if you look at it, because this thought actually really stuck in my mind, because in that one sentence, the quality of, in fact, almost everything which Narendra Modi is trying to do eventually goes back to that. That if you look at all these, at the programs, that if your health is better, your nutrition is better, your education is better, you have electricity, you have water, you have housing, every part of it eventually feeds into the quality of human resources. So I would say that in a more technology-centric era which is coming, a more globalized era which is coming, one where the strategic alignments with the US would become stronger. I actually feel this is one relationship. It will not happen automatically. It will not be free of irritants and problems. It's natural. But it's one where I see very strong growth possibility. So then we finally come to the question of questions. I don't know. It's hard really to think of a single question which people ask. It's also changed. My first few years as foreign minister, a lot of people would ask me saying, like, how did it happen? What does it feel like? How do you adjust to it? There were even people who asked me saying, why did you leave that high-paying job you had? So there's a little bit of it. I think it depends. TV interviewers get a lot into these trick questions. That's the one which I am a bit careful about.
Thank you, sir.